and I'm a real compulsive eater. And I'm not here by mistake. I have a multitude of addictions, but food and eating were my first addiction to abuse and the last one I let go of. So it's been a journey. What I am saying tonight is purely my truth based on my experience. So I'll launch into it because I'm 72. I've been here for over 34 years, and I probably got more to say than I can say. So I will just start out by saying I was born in the American South, in southwestern Tennessee, where my family lived since 1819. They got there before Memphis, and so it's I've been around the South for a long time, and so they were firmly entrenched in Southern food practices, where everything is either is fried and or sweet, and that's the way they all are. So I have a real family history of addictions. Grandfather was an alcoholic. Great-grandfather was an alcoholic. My mother had an eating disorder. My father's side had narcotics addiction. So I was really set up to be vulnerable to this disease. And my other environmental factors played in. My father was a candy salesman, and I had unlimited supplies of just about anything I wanted, and some of it was really good. My mother, being a Southern cook, was a good cook, and she was also, as I said, a compulsive eater, but she was also a compulsive overfeeder. So as I was born, my abnormal relationship with food began before conscious memory, because I know from my mother and who she is and how she did my younger siblings is that whenever any discomfort was expressed, something sweet went in her mouth. And so that was the solution I learned first off. I was a normal looking kid running around out in the country where I grew up. And then at age 5, I did experience some sexual trauma and was taught how to act out with myself sexually. 5 years old, that's a really early beginning. I didn't know how to handle that. I went to school when I was 6 years old, and between the time I was 6 and 7, I gained 45 pounds and was a 110-pound 7-year-old. So at this time, my parents became quite concerned. They took me to a doctor who, gave them a diet for put me on. But of course, you know how that goes. As a kid, my father, the candy salesman, and the refrigerator and the pantries and the cabinets full of great food, I didn't pay any attention to that. I just learned how to steal food very early, which continued on later in my life. And so I was playing baseball, and it turns out I was too fat to get in any of the uniforms, and the kids laughed at me, so I got shame on board, and the shame made me not have willingness and propelled me into self-imposed restrictive dieting and compulsive exercise, which was extraordinarily early for that to begin, but I did it. And I lost 30 pounds on my own self-imposed eating disorder program. And I was really highly praised for that. What great control you have. and all of this. But it did a really bad thing because I got the illusion that I was under control of my food. And I absolutely was not. I thought anytime I needed to get this under control, I had it. I'd done it then, I'd do it again. So that started something that went from age 7 to age 37, alternating periods of binging and then restricting and gaining 40 or 50 pounds and losing 40, 50 pounds over and over and over. So my food addiction, or eating addiction actually, got started along that time. And then by the time I was 10, I added some chemicals to that. And the chemicals were also a part of my behavioral sexual rituals. And that all increased my shame, and so I ate even more. So addiction is a progressive disease, though, and things got worse. You know, here I was with an eating disorder, abusing foods and eating. I was drinking by now and was an alcoholic. I developed intravenous narcotics use, and I was practicing physician at this time, and so I found the way to satisfy sugar, alcohol, and narcotics was cough syrup, and so I started injecting that into my growing vein while I was acting out. I mean, it was insane. I was the guy that go to the party and drink Jack Daniels and eat chocolate chip cookies. I mean, it was bizarre the way I did things, but for people who are compulsive eaters, that probably doesn't sound too strange. So that sort of bizarre behavior ultimately landed me in a drug and alcohol treatment center where I got there, and after a period of time, I realized that I had compulsive eating behaviors because I was doing all sorts of funny things with all the desserts and ice creams. So I, again, just said, well, I'm going to stop sugar and not eat any desserts. Well, I stopped overeating those things, but I didn't stop overeating. It turns out, it doesn't matter for me. If it can go in my mouth, I'll overdo it. And so it for me, from the very beginning, was something I struggled with. Didn't know anything about OA. I just decided I was going to do this. So I got back, went back into practicing medicine, was seeing patients, started seeing some people with addictions, and finally we had people. I started having people come in that had eating disorders, and so I had my people in AA told me about OA, so I started sending people there. Well, on the night of February 28, 1987, I had a nightmare. I was 14 months chemically and sexually sober, and I shared that in the next day in my AA meeting, and it was being trapped in a room, and a door opened on the wall, and more muffins poured out of it and started chasing me around the room. which was a bizarre thing. I shared that in an AA meeting, and I got some blank looks. But this woman followed me out of the room and said, "Lee, you're in the wrong meeting. Come with me tonight at 6." And I looked, and it was one of my own patients whom I had sent to OA. So she came back and got me and brought me there with her. In recovery, don't have long to share about it all, but I have 4 spiritual minimums that I practice as the basis of my recovery. One is abstinence. The second one is meetings. The third is sponsorship. And the fourth is time, the passage of time. So the first thing I did when I got into my first OA meeting was to get a plan of eating, and achieving abstinence, I was going to pursue the other 3. During the past 34 years, I have found that recovery is an evolution and not a revolution. So that's for the passage of time. For me also, my eating recovery is entirely different from my chemical recovery, and that my eating addiction is not a substance abuse addiction. I thought it was related to sugar or sweets, but it was not. I can overeat anything. And then when I looked into it, I found that if you look at a carrot has just about as much sugar as an Oreo has in it. And I thought, well, that's not the problem. So I find that it's behaviors and it's eating, which is a verb. So I've done some simple behaviors that have helped me become and stay abstinent, eating 3 moderate meals a day. And I do such things as sit down to eat. I use utensils to eat now. I don't eat out of serving containers now. I don't eat when I'm preparing food. I don't eat when I'm cleaning it up. And these were extraordinarily radical behavior changes at the time. Following a plan of eating is surrender. And I surrender my eating to the plan. And the plan controls my eating rather than me. So this surrendering is a powerful tool because it allows me to not be with the illusion of control. I don't have any self-control. I lose every battle on that. But when I follow something, I am a disciple of that, which means for me, disciple is related to the word discipline. So when I'm following a plan, it's a form of discipline. And that plan, for me, is a spiritual connection to my higher power. And it's revolutionized. That idea over the past 34 years has revolutionized my relationship to food, eating, my body, and my higher power. Today, food, I don't see it as an enemy. Yes?
Have 5 minutes.
Great. I don't see food as an enemy today. Food is actually, for me, a spiritual tool. And I put it into the context that thousands of years, human beings have used food and eating as a spiritual tool to connect them with each other and to a power greater than themselves. So that if I find food as the enemy, I am taking away one of the spiritual tools for me personally to recover. So I try to visualize my abstinence as a spiritual connection to God, a bridge to God. And I turn my plan of eating as spiritual eating. And this is a behavior, and it doesn't involve substances. I avoid things that are obviously triggering to me as certain foods, items, but not broad ranges of substances. So I think that spiritual eating involves mindful eating. It involves experiencing food with gratitude like it's a gift and not a possession. Sharing food with others as often as I can. And it's, spiritual eating means it is something that where I was, it's not secretive, it's open, and whereas my compulsive eating left me chronically empty, my spiritual practice of eatings give me a feeling not only of being full, but actually of being fulfilled. And it's been an amazing journey, and it's not over yet. Every day begins a new one. So I will shut up and tell you that that's all I will say tonight. I could fill up several hours more, but that's just me liking to hear myself talk.